When I was a young graduate back in the 80s, working my first job in London, one of my favorite bands was Pink Floyd. I think everybody's kind of heard of Pink Floyd, haven't they? My four housemates that I shared a place with at the time, it was the only way we could afford a house, um, came to me one day all excited. And they said, "We're going to get tickets to see Pink Floyd. They're going to perform their new album, The Wall, in this huge mega venue in London." It kind of sounds strange in these days of sort of Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift and all these mega concerts. But these massive venues were a new idea in the UK at that time in the 80s. And one which I was sort of dead set against. I sort of didn't go for these big venues. I went for small venues where you could see the people properly and stuff like that. And my view at the time was, well, the only way I can protest against bands playing these huge arenas is not to go. So I missed one of the most iconic, groundbreaking live performances of all time, Pink Floyd performing The Wall. Um, I still wonder whether I was sort of just being a stubborn idiot, or whether I was being true to myself and my values. Flash forward 35 years or so, and I was appalled at Nike's arrogant business practices and their treatment of athletes. My approach is basically the same. Don't buy their running shoes and gear. This book today just reinforces my approach to Nike. But I still wonder if I should have gone to that Pink Floyd gig. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new or different. My name's Alan, and with my co-host Liz, we're going to talk today about Lauren Fleshman's memoir, Good for a Girl.
Good for a Girl is Lauren Fleshman's memoir. She talks about growing up with an alcoholic father and discovering the sport of running for the first time as a girl who could beat all the boys in the mile at school. As a pro, she ended up in a system that pushed her limits and which she realized wasn't built for female athletes. She reflects on her own journey filled with friends and teammates who are also suffering in the system and draws on recent research on female physiology and development to justify why the future of girls in sport needs to change. A little bit about Lauren Fleshman, although I think probably most of our listeners have heard of her before. Lauren Fleshman is one of the most decorated American distance runners of all time, having won 5 NCAA championships at Stanford University and 2 national championships as a professional. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times and Runner's World. She's a mother of 2, the brand strategy advisor for Oiselle, a fitness apparel company for women, who also had Kara Goucher, if you guys remember us talking about that book. So Kara Goucher went from Nike to Oiselle. And she's the co-founder of Picky Bars, a natural food company. She lives in Bend, Oregon. So we couldn't get Lauren on the podcast today, but hopefully she'll listen to the podcast and see that we do her book justice. And so what we'll do instead is Alan and I are we just thought we would talk about 4 buckets. So I guess we'll just briefly go over, like, had we heard of Lauren before reading this book? What did we learn that we didn't know before, if there was anything? Was the book relatable to the general population? Because Lauren Fleshman is a pro athlete, which is something that, most of us have not experienced. And did we learn anything that we can incorporate or that'll help us in our running? So those are kind of the 4 things we're going to discuss. And I guess I'll start with Alan. So I liked your story.
You did?
I did, yeah,
I
it was
kind of
great.
sprung that on you without telling you about it.
So I thought at the end you were going to say, I still wonder if I should have tried those first Nike Vaporfly shoes that they came out with in like 2017.
I'm pretty I'm happy
You're
with
like,
my choice for regarding Nike. I'm just more questionable about my choice regarding Pink Floyd.
yeah, so because at one point I had gone to the dark side, although I didn't know as much about Nike's practices as I do today. So in my defense, but I did when I was able to get my hands on a pair of those Nike Vaporfly Next Percent. I definitely did. And I think
Yeah,
it was
I actually
shortly
had a pair
after.
of Nike shoes at the time as well. I
Oh
think
yeah,
we
you
both
did.
bought them on the same day.
Yeah, you
Um,
had Pegasus Turbo or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. They don't exist anymore, I don't think,
So
do they?
I guess that's probably 4 years ago now, something like that.
Mm,
Mm. That was the last Nike thing that I bought because then
mm.
I read Win at All Costs
Yeah,
and the Mary Kane story as well, and thought, no.
that was an eye opener. So I guess first question, Alan, did you um did you know who Lauren Fleshman was before you read the
Did I
book?
know anything about Lauren? Relatively little. I knew she'd been a good junior athlete, but I didn't know how good she was really.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the book, I would say if she hadn't have had trouble with injuries and hadn't gotten injured at key moments during her training, I would say probably she was as good as there was.
Mm-hmm.
So where you and I tend to talk about Karagacha in terms of American girls from that era and
Mm-hmm.
Shalane Flanagan. I think she could have been just as good, if not better, than those people. If
Actually, she
she,
was. I mean, because she used to run against Shalane Flanagan in the 5,000. I have to say, a little bit like you, like I knew more about Lauren Fleshman, I guess after she kind of retired from the sport than I did while she was in the sport. Because while she was in the sport, I think I had seen her in Runner's World, but then I really kind of
Mhm.
learned more about her when Kara, because I was following more the marathoners, so like Kara, Shalane, and Des Linden.
Yeah,
And when Kara joined Wesel, I remember finding out that Lauren was already with Wesel. And I think that's where I learned more about Lauren Fleshman. I think it's
yeah.
just because I didn't follow so much of the track events.
Also, she did a lot of social media around the time she was doing picky bars as well. Um,
Oh, okay.
and I sort of saw her there. Um,
Oh, the algorithm didn't feed me that.
the algorithm's feeding me things to eat. It's not feeding them to you.
Oh, okay. Maybe I don't click
Could
on
be.
enough food related things.
I knew she'd been a good junior athlete, but I didn't realize how good. She was like phenomenally good.
hmm
And I guess as a young, even before she got into juniors at sort of college, as a school kid, she was sort of dominant.
Yeah.
Um, and so she came through with I think probably with a certain self-confidence and a certain sort of performance confidence. I was going to say arrogance, but that's kind of a pejorative word a little bit, but sort of a belief in herself that she was, better than everybody.
hmm
And so she exploded through the sort of NCAAs and junior college. Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's caffeine bullet, Liz?
It's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor, and they're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast. Yeah, but I think also she developed that. I mean, I think that also came from her father because her father was like a huge supporter, and he'd come and watch her run, and he was always so proud when she was first.
Did you know that? Did you know that before we read the book?
Nope.
So you're talking about the things that you learned that you didn't know before. So you've moved on to question number
Oh,
two
I'm
already.
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on to question number two then.
Okay,
I mean,
let's.
I
Because
mean, because
I think we knew quite a little bit,
we
but not much. But we learned quite a lot.
Yeah, basically that first section is just to say that we were pretty ignorant about, who Lauren Fleshman was
Yeah,
before we read the book. And we learned quite a bit in the book.
we learned what a good athlete she was.
What a good athlete she was.
Yeah,
Yeah, we learned that her father was kind of key in developing
yeah,
like that
yeah.
self-belief at first. I mean, she did get it afterwards from other places, like coaches she had and just I guess, proof to herself, 'cause she would win. So it was proof to herself that she could win. You know what I learned that I didn't know was that she met with Coach Wetmore in Boulder, and that the team, because this was Kara's old team, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that's where Kara Goucher ended
Could have
up
been.
training
Now
and
she lives in
racing.
Boulder now.
Yeah, she does now, but like I remember at one point she went back to Coach Wetmore um
Okay.
for her like last marathon trials attempt, but I didn't know the whole thing about the disordered eating culture in that team, because it seemed like Kara came out of there fine. So it's interesting that Lauren noticed it right away.
To some extent, Lauren was describing something specific that she saw there that probably was occurring all over the US.
Yeah.
I'd heard about a thing called the Footlocker curse.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going back to question one. What did I'd heard about the Footlocker curse, but I didn't really know what it was all about. And I think Footlocker were the sponsors of the
Of the big competition at the end of their high school.
final school competition. And the curse was if you won that, you never went on to be
Very good. Or pro or anything.
we never went on to win stuff. You never went to the Olympics. Or you never became a. And it turns out that a lot of this, I mean, we've kind of concluded now, I think, that a lot of that was the way that girls were
Mm-hmm.
coached or trained or advised or driven.
Because Lauren escaped that curse. Because she did go on to do like really great things, even though like later she did have a plateau year that she talks about in the book, but she was able to like get herself through that and continue to build and do great things.
Except that she probably could have gone on to run in two Olympics, and she didn't run in any Olympics.
Yeah.
You could perhaps argue that she's one of the most decorated collegiate running athletes never to go to the Olympics because she's got how many did you say in the bio? She's got how many NCAAs
5.
and two professional national championships. But she managed to be injured at the important moments, either injured
Mm-hmm.
and couldn't take part in the trials, or injured ahead of the trials and then couldn't perform in the trials in the second one.
Yeah.
So she was cursed slightly differently at a higher level.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit the downside of having just like one competition that where they pick their
Yeah,
Olympic team, is because,
yeah.
if you're unlucky on that day, or if you're injured on that day, or if you were injured leading up, then you won't get in. But maybe the rest of the time, maybe like the 3.5 out of 4 years, you're dominating everything. And then the 6 months where all of this happens with the Olympic trials and the Olympics, like it's just not, like you just didn't have a good season and then you're not going, which is
That's
kind
true,
of
but
crazy. But I mean, I guess it is the best way, because the other way is a bit like Canada. I think we have a committee and they select athletes, but it's
usually we
subjective.
have one position that if you run in one event and you hit the qualifying time, you get to go. and then the other ones are selected
Hmm.
afterwards from qualifiers, and then Canada applies its own rules, and then everybody argues about it afterwards, and then Canada doesn't send enough people, and
Yeah.
I
And
think
then we
this,
just end up following the athletes from the US
yeah,
instead
I mean,
because they have a full team.
I guess we've probably been through it before, but I was quite disappointed that Canada only sent Melindy Elmore as the only female marathoner
I
when
know.
Tasha Wodak clearly deserved to go.
I
There's
mean, she's a
probably others as
powerhouse.
well. They could have sent these people, or even some younger people in terms of not preparing them for to win a medal, but preparing them for the Olympics afterwards.
Hmm.
And we see how important that is with swimming, for example.
Yeah.
You know, Summer McIntosh arrives in the swimming and she's still young, but she's a consummate professional and she can deal with the Olympics because she's already been when she was 17.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
anyway,
She
get
goes and
off
she
my
just sweeps the podium.
get off my high horse. Um,
Well,
one of the
yeah.
reasons though that Lauren wasn't able to go to the Olympics was, yeah, the trials are the trials, and if you're injured, you too bad, so sad. But the reason she's injured, we could postulate the reason that she's injured is how she's been brought through the system in terms of coaching
Hmm.
and how unserving the training philosophies were in the US for girl runners,
Yeah.
endurance athletes.
Hmm.
As you say, weight watching culture.
I mean, she's not the first one to talk about it in her book, but yeah, she definitely saw a lot of it. And she definitely was surprisingly resistant to it. I think she did have some luck in the system because she had a coach that didn't believe in just, cutting calories and losing weight to lose weight. Because every time she would go back and see Vin, he would be like, Lauren, are you sure that you're, eating enough or taking care of yourself or whatever he would say? And that would sort of kind of snap her into like, okay, well, yeah, I have to fuel my training kind of thing. So I felt like she was pretty resistant to all of that, except it still affected her because she would go through periods where she would see people, teammates that would lose a bunch of weight and then beat her in a race. And they made it seem effortless. But then, of course,
Yeah, that's the problem. It works the first time.
exactly. It works for a little while. And the thing is, like, it seemed like there was like a whole lineup of these women that would kind of come in and lose weight. And then they would have like an absolutely dominant year. But then she
They
wouldn't see them
disappear.
anymore.
Yeah.
They would disappear. But meanwhile, she was always there. She was always there, kind of just like trying to chip away and trying to figure it out. And it kind of makes sense that, like if she's seeing this repeatedly, she starts to ask herself, like, and then it goes along also with being a woman in society in general. It's always about being thinner, not liking the way you look, like trying to change something all the time. You always have this impression that everything that's marketed to you, it's to like improve something. I guess it leaks over into sports as well. It's hard, I think it would have been hard for her to be completely resistant to all of that. But she did surprisingly snap herself out of, a few episodes of disordered eating along the way, which she talks about in the book.
Think that was mostly down to her extreme resilience and she's very driven
Mm-hmm.
and had a strong belief in her ability
Yes.
from her childhood.
Yeah. I think without that strong belief in herself, maybe she would have been one of the victims, like these women that would come in and disappear. So actually, before we move on, another thing that I thought I'd mention that was really cool was Lauren actually mentioned in her book that she tried to pitch the idea of a campaign to stop eating disorders to Nike because Nike likes to do these big campaigns, and she pitched this
Hmm.
idea to them, and they told her to just focus on getting a medal or whatever it is that they told her.
Yeah, go away,
Um,
little girl.
yeah, they were just like they just dismissed it. And I think they missed a huge opportunity. They would have been, the
Hmm.
face of the revolution. But
Hmm.
now they're just kind of like, no, they're going to be seen as, part of the problem instead of part of the revolution.
That was super smart by Lauren because she said rather than try and go up against these behemoth companies, let's try
Mm.
and pitch it in a way that they'll get on board. It was a
Also,
great
she was a
idea.
Nike athlete, and I
Yeah.
mean, they're really good. They're really good at marketing, and they're really good at doing campaigns. So, and she was able to actually twist things in her favor with the campaign that she was involved in, where I think they wanted her to wear something that she didn't want to wear, and so she wore what she wanted to wear by somehow,
Yeah, she tried to
I
turn it
guess,
into
an advantage for them, or
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
which was
by
like,
basically looking more badass than pretty girl.
yeah, which that's pretty smart.
I guess one of the things I put under what did I learn that I didn't know before? Already knew, but I learned more detail on how poorly the athletes were treated in terms of, their contracts. If you compare people right at the top, the US girls right at the top of their sport, going to the Olympics, the sorts of contracts that they had were,
Hmm.
you're going into an Olympic trial, or you have an appearance that you have to make, and the pressure to perform is not only what you're putting on yourself, but your whole family goes down the drain because your contract gets cut in half if
Yeah.
you don't set a record or you don't qualify for the Olympics. Just seems kind of unjust. And that the girls have worse contracts, they get paid less than the
Hmm.
guys. One hopes that's not the case these days, but certainly it was then,
Yep.
which is only about what, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't really that long ago. I mean, maybe it continued until even more recently. So, do you want to go on to, did we find that this book is relatable to the general population?
Oh, just one thing that I noted while I was reading the book about the problems with letting female athletes lose weight. They get good results initially, so they keep doing it. Then they're going to red S, relative energy deficiency in sport, and then it's incredibly difficult to recover from that. I noticed while I was reading this book, I probably noticed somewhere else in some of my reading that the sport of climbing, I don't know whether you've heard this, Liz, but the sport of climbing is either starting to introduce or is trying to introduce BMI, body mass index control limits for climbers, because the lighter you are as a climber, the more advantage that you have. So if you're an Olympic level climber or a professional climber, speed climber or whatever, you're going to get an advantage by losing weight. And if you are losing weight beyond what your body's sustaining, the sport of climbing figures, well, we're effectively endorsing bad practice by allowing people to do that. So we need to control it. So we're going to bring in monitoring people's BMIs with a view to evolving that into a control mechanism. I wonder if
Yeah.
there's, all the girls get drug tested, all the guys get drug tested on a regular
Hmm.
basis. Maybe if there's enough data and there's enough statistics around it, maybe there could be a way of controlling, preventing coaches from saying, oh, you should lose some weight. Be interesting to see what develops.
I know. I think more and more, like, especially the female coaches that get into coaching, I think more and more like an athlete won't be told to lose weight. I don't think. I mean, but that just might be me and my, rose-colored glasses looking at the world, being like 80% of the world is good. So we're all good people. Let's just do good things. But and I know that's not always true, but
Well, I think from what I see from Nike is their approach is there anything in the rules that prevents us from doing this? Answer no. Okay, well, we want to do this in order to get an advantage.
yeah. But I think what's happening now with people like Lauren and Stacy Sims that does research on female athletes, and there are
Hmm.
others. I think what's happening now is that they're realizing that actually that advantage that you thought you had is actually not an advantage, and what you're actually doing is a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage to your performance and to your time in the sport. So by trying to limit calorie intake and going into red S, then what you're actually doing is like, yes, you might have a few good performances. And I guess maybe like there are still contracts or companies that want to squeeze a few good performances out of each athlete and and then dispose of them for the next one. But I think in general, they're seeing that it's not an advantage because what you want is someone that can consistently perform. And if you want to consistently perform, then you have to be healthy. And the research is showing it.
I'd be interested in the views of everybody. We should take a poll when we're next on a club run to
Mm-hmm.
see whether people think something like this, everybody's going to follow the general rule or the general science, or people are going to still try to work an angle even if it hurts the athletes.
I mean, I guess you're right. The thing is also that not everyone is up to date. You know, the coaches don't learn about research in when they learn about coaching. They learn about how to coach an athlete, about,
Mm,
prescribing training, that kind of thing. In Canada, actually, you do learn about early development. When I took the coaching course through Athletics Canada, there was a whole section on like developmental age and when is it appropriate for,
that's for training load or distance, isn't it?
yeah, but
Yeah.
also in terms of specializing in running. So they were saying like not before, and I can't remember the exact age,
12, I
but
think.
it's later than that, like at
Mm.
age 12, and it depends on male, female, because women they start developing earlier, like they start maturing earlier than boys. So so I think boys it's like it could be like a year later or something like that. It kind of depends. But yeah, it's even later. So even at like 12, kids should still be doing different sports and not like focusing on running. And when they get to, I think it's like 15 or something, they can start having running as their main activity, and they call it train to train. So this idea that because before that it's like, it's more like playing games with them. If you have like a running club for kids, like you have them run, but then part of it is playing games. So they're running during a game, and part of it is learning skills. And yeah. So anyway,
I think the thing is it's easy to comply with all of that when the kids are young,
yeah.
and that it's more tempting to tread the edge of the rules, or when the person that you're investing in might give you a huge marketing advantage
Yeah.
for your business.
Yeah. I guess also there's a lot of money um in school sports. I mean, it seems like you have this Foot Locker championship for high school
Mm.
athletes. I mean,
Yeah, I
we
guess
don't
there
have that
is.
in Canada, I
Yeah, I
don't
guess there
think.
is in the US. Yeah, it's mostly the US. I think you don't see that
Yeah.
in other places.
Or like coaches in college, they get paid, whereas I think here it's usually someone that already works at the school, and maybe not all sports. I think all sports are not created equal here. I don't know. I remember my coach, I mean, I don't know if they paid him much. If at all. They paid for his travel and stuff, but I don't really know. I don't really know how that works, but I don't think there's a bunch of money in the system for running. Football, they have a lot of money, but running, no, not really.
Yeah, I think my point is at a junior level, you can be altruistic and say, we have to we're coached and we're advised and we have to be careful about how much running we give you, etc.
Hmm.
And advise you to have a proper diet and things. But then when you get to, Olympic or professional standards, if there's not a hard rule, some companies are going to not tell you, but strongly encourage you in ways that they're able to do things that are not against the rules because it's not written in the rules, because it's just science. Well, the science is that you'll be sidelined in 2.5 years' time when we'll have another athlete coming through. And I think that's my concern at the top level with not having rules. I think Nike have proved that their philosophy is to do everything possible to the limit of what's within the rules. So if you don't write it in the rules, they're going to ignore it if they feel that it serves their purpose, not necessarily the athlete's best interest. Now the two things should coincide, but not always.
Yeah, that's true. I think also what changed now is that with social media, and people like Lauren writing books like this, is that young athletes can be aware, and they can make sure that if they're not in a healthy
Mm.
environment, that they find a different one. They can at least be aware. If there's enough awareness from the athletes, hopefully, when the best athletes don't want to go to your school because you have a culture of eating disorders,
Yeah.
maybe that'll be the motivation for the
Yes.
school to change, for them to address the
Yeah.
issues. So,
And then when people won't sign the Nike contract because you have a bad reputation, uh,
yep.
I don't think we're quite there yet, though, are we?
No, maybe not. But, I don't know. I think we're getting there.
For sure.
And every athlete that you quote unquote save from getting into a system for like a couple of years, getting burnt out and quitting the sport altogether, every athlete that you save from that, well, maybe you're going to have a lifelong runner that's, a healthy
Hmm.
person and enjoys running beyond college, which is like right now, I don't think that happens because
Yeah.
I think a lot of college runners they kind of drop out of the sport or they quit after college and they're happy to hang up their spikes because they're just like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore, you know?
I'll
And
be
that's
su
sad.
I'll be super interested to see over the next few years how the careers of Parker Valby
Mm-hmm.
and
Caitlin.
Caitlin Tui
Mm-hmm.
evolve because they've come up in the enlightened era.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually saw an event where Mary Kane went over and spoke with Caitlin Tui in terms of probably counseling her a little bit, and then we see them make their choices for who they're going professional with, and then we'll see how their careers develop. Let's hope they develop in a way that, is not influenced by bad coaching and pressure from sponsoring companies.
Yeah. And then you have athletes like Lauren that get into coaching. And Lauren knows full well what the environment is like. I bet she's looking out for all her athletes.
She probably is. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't get too far off because Shalane Flanagan is coach with Bauman, isn't she?
Hmm.
And we've seen Bauman having a few issues
Yeah.
with doping and
But I
with
think
people leaving because of misplaced focus on certain issues. So
I don't know how that correlates with
you're
when
sort of good
Shalane.
cop, bad cop now, aren't we?
I
You're
know,
you're
I
being the
know.
good cop and I'm being the bad cop,
Because
but
I like Shalane, but I don't know, like she hasn't
um,
really, I don't know, she hasn't really talked about that. And also, I don't know what the timeline was, like I kind of have the impression that she came in sort of maybe either when that was happening or just after some of those things happened, because I think you're talking about Shelby
yeah,
Houlihan.
Shelby
Yeah.
Houlihan, yeah.
But I don't know if Shalane was already coaching at that point. So, I mean, maybe Shalane will come in and change things for the better. I mean, because I don't know. Maybe someone's gonna end up like sending us some hate mail, be like, no, Shalane is part of the problem, but I don't know.
That'd be
I
very cool.
You love conflict. I'm like, no, no. Everyone is good somewhere in there. Like most people are 80% good. Let's
Yeah,
just focus on that. I think Shalane, I mean, Shalane's never been caught doing anything herself. Also, like all the people that have trained with her, whatever, have said good things about her. She's now coaching
yeah,
the Bowerman track team. So maybe she's gonna be the person that, um, just plants some little seeds that will flower into change later. I mean, it must not be easy because isn't Bowerman sponsored by Nike? So they probably
yes.
have to follow some kind of etiquette or whatever. So, I mean, we really don't know what's going on over there, but I'd be surprised if Shalane was part of the problem.
I think we've talked this out. I'm not gonna come back on this. So, question number three, was the book relatable to the general population? Well, it was relatable as a story. It was a fun story to read.
I mean, I think Lauren herself was very relatable, even though she became a pro, because I think most of the book reflects on her growing up, getting into the sport, and also like struggles at home and struggles with the pressures that women face growing up, having to look good or be coachable. She actually says at one point, she says that at one point she found out that it was more important to be coachable and look good than to be healthy. And she also had an alcoholic father, and she talks about that experience, which I think
Yeah.
that could be relatable to a lot of people. She actually learned to be observant of, just nuances in behavior. And I think that probably helped her in navigating, the whole system of being a pro as well. Because at one point, so she was very close to her father, and at one point he like while he was drinking, I think he showed some aggression to her. And she kind of got scared. And then from then on, she would recognize a pattern in, like if he had so many drinks and if he did a certain thing,
Hmm.
then she knew not to sort of irritate him. Or she knew, okay, now is when like you let him be alone. So she sort of like started to learn his behaviors. And
She's got very good at reading the signals.
yeah, and I feel like she was good at reading the signals in other people as well, even though like sometimes she mentioned in the book because she would find out about her training buddies that maybe had an eating disorder that was completely hidden until one day she discovered that they had an eating disorder, and that caught her by surprise. I feel like a lot of times she was sort of confronted by this feeling of like, oh my God, I can't believe that that person has that secret. But I think she was still pretty good at observing people and reading them and reacting the right
I agree.
way.
Yeah. I was thinking about this and I was thinking really the book's relatable for anybody who's ever really wanted to achieve something really badly. So you don't have to actually be a runner or be in that sports arena, but anybody who's driven to achieve something or has wanted to achieve something but hasn't known how, I think she gives a good examples of how honest she was with herself and her situation and then examines all the things that she can put into action. So in terms of, trying to do something actionable
Mm-hmm.
around trying to get out of a problem or to achieve a result, or she was very creative. Like you give the example with Nike when she's like, okay, I don't agree with this. Okay, but they kind of own me. They have a contract, and if I don't do it, I'm going to lose my livelihood. Now I'm compromised in terms of my personal values. And rather than say, well, I'm stuck and I signed the contract, so I'll have to do it, she goes, okay, how can I spin it? Okay, I'll pitch it to them in a different way. And that way I keep my own and personal integrity and I keep my contract with Nike and I can move forward in my Olympic ambitions. Really, that's not much to do with running. It's more to do with
Problem solving.
problem solving. Yeah, problem solving, working your way through it. Where there's a will, there's a way. How do we resolve the Rubik's Cube here? That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite shocked to read that when she ran the Olympic trials for the second time, I think it was for the Rio Olympics. I think she came fifth in the race, but because she had a qualifying time, she was fourth alternate. So she was first alternate for the Olympics.
Oh yes, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And when she got dropped during the race, she actually thought to herself, okay, I can't come in the first three. I have to be first alternate. And why did she do that? Because once she did that, she actually approached Shalane Flanagan and Kara Gotcha, who both qualified for the 5,000 and 10,000 meters, and asked them to relinquish one of their spots to go to drop one of the distances so that she could pick it up. I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was probably the 5,000 meters.
Yeah, because I don't think she did the 10.
Like, well, when I was reading it, I was thought, what? You would have the audacity or the nerve or the drive to actually ask one of your running colleagues, I guess, to drop their position so you could go. But it was the only way she could see that she could get there. So she was just unturning every stone.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that it kind of makes sense too because like they're both really demanding events, and the 5,000 you have to run more than one of them. And so depending on the schedule, Um, I don't know, like it would be hard to run a really like your best ever 5,000 after having done the qualifying round or rounds. I think,
That would be Lauren's pitch, probably. That would be
yeah.
Lauren's pitch. She would pitch it like that. So, okay,
Mm,
you give yourself a better chance of winning one race. I can have a chance. I kind of deserve it, but I was injured anyway. My contract's going to get halved if I don't go. So help me out.
well, I think, and also I think she was like pretty dominant in that distance. It's not like she
Hmm.
was like, oh, I just kind of,
Yeah, I mean, the argument was I
was
could have
able
won
to
the
pull
race if I'd
that.
been fully fit.
But yeah, that's a hard thing to go and ask your teammates to, drop out of an Olympic event because,
Yeah, but I think your average person would just go, "Oh, woe is me! I didn't run the race. That's it. I didn't run the race I had to run. I got dropped. I came fifth. I'm out."
mhm,
But her approach is to think, have I covered all the ground that I can cover?
yeah.
Am I prepared to ask them?
And I figure
Why wouldn't
like,
I? They can say no, and I'll
yeah,
still be friends with them.
and she did it. She just asked. I mean, there is no harm in asking, and we all kind of know that. But yeah, mo like probably a lot of people, they wouldn't ask.
But I think she was also very honest, and she said, she was pretty desperate to
Mm,
go. She'd invested,
her whole life.
yeah, she'd
Yeah.
invested 4 years, got injured, and then another 4 years. So she figured, well, it's 8 years of my training. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
But so the example that in terms of the relatability is that if you want to achieve, really want to achieve something, you should think creatively around everything that you can do to achieve it.
Yeah, I guess it's also an example of just wanting something really bad. She wanted to go to the Olympics really bad. And we all have those things in our lives that at one point, we wanted really bad and we couldn't achieve. And like probably not going to the Olympics for most of us, but
Hmm.
it's something, that job that,
Yeah,
you
and to that
worked
extent,
really hard
yeah,
to get ready for the interview and you thought
yeah.
you crushed it and you didn't get the job or, whatever it is.
She does a great job of in the book of kind of describing how she feels in an honest way
Hmm.
in terms of her despair at being injured and her hopes and her desperation. And so you kind of live this with her, and my heart kind of was kind of breaking for her towards the end there when she wasn't able to fulfill her dream.
I know. I was like, when she finally decided to retire, part of me was like, how about just like another cycle? Just one more Olympic cycle. Just one more try, like that was I mean, she describes it well in the book. Like that was the best decision for her. She had a really long career, so
Mm.
I mean, it's not like she has anything to regret. She's run at a really high level for a really long time, which also in that sort of era it's not super common and she always ran those kind of track distances, so 5,000, 1,500, and that's not usually where you'll see runners have the longest careers. So usually they'll have a long career like Shalane Flanagan. She did track but then she moved to the marathon, so kind of it seems like they have to move up in distance, but Lauren just seemed to be really good at the track races for a really long time.
Yeah, we never saw her sort of graduate into an older age. See 40-year-olds winning marathons these days.
Yep, you do.
Yeah. Anything else in the relatable box?
Not really. I think like we pretty much covered it
Hmm.
in terms of what I wanted to say. The only other thing I had written down was I guess the struggling with thoughts about body image and
Yeah.
always wondering what you can do to be better in some way. And I think as women or girls growing up, like that's probably pretty common. And it doesn't matter even if you're not in sport. Like I
Yeah.
think that's something that most women relate to, just it seems like one of the rites of passage from being a girl to being a woman is to be like unhappy with your body and one day hopefully making peace with it and being like,
Hmm.
okay, well, my body is mine and this is the way it is. And for some women, it's struggling your entire life. I find that's relatable. Not relatable for you, but for women.
Yeah,
So,
I'm trying
so,
not to say anything because
so 50% of the
everybody will just go, "What does
population.
he know?"
Well, you do have three girls, so you must know
That's
something.
true. I just ignore all of that stuff. Then they're beautiful. They're
Ah,
all
okay,
beautiful.
okay. You
They're all
let your
beautiful.
and you let your wife deal with all the if they're if they're feeling insecure.
They all look great
I
all
don't
the
think.
time. I think
Yeah.
I'm more interested in what's going on in their heads in terms of,
Ah,
are they, I don't know, thinking the right things?
happy.
Yeah, do they
Yeah.
have the right mindsets?
I think that's your like your runner mindset is like, you know, because as runners, we're always trying to figure out how to be like
Mm,
better, faster, more resilient to injury. And so you're just applying that to the rest of your life. You just want all your kids to be um, thinking about,
oh,
how
I
they
want them to be
could.
passionate about something and trying to pursue it and get excited about it. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter what it is. Um,
Actually, I think all three of your girls are passionate about something.
yeah, well, so it's worked.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just luck, but yes, they are.
Yeah. I don't know. I think everybody like would become passionate about something with the right environment, I guess. So
Yeah,
probably you just cultivated that right environment. I mean, I don't think humans are
yeah,
born to just like not like anything. Because as kids, all kids like have some kind of, I mean, what kid doesn't
yeah.
have a passion about something?
I think my approach is to catch them being interested and support that, or be interested in that when they say, "Oh, look at this thing I did with the gardening," and you
Hmm.
think, "I hate gardening. Why are they asking me about gardening?" But instead of doing that, you go, "What did you do?" And they go, "I did this," and you can see that they're excited about it. So you just go, "Wow, that's fantastic. Tell me more about it." And it's
Hmm.
not that you're being dishonest, it's you're interested in their passion, not their subject.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Actually, I think my husband does that with me. And so
Ah, we're discovering, we're unpicking your marriage now. Excellent.
yeah, I think he totally does that with me because I always say like I'm definitely a better person with him than I was alone, which I guess is the hallmark of the right
A good marriage.
relationship,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so at
Yeah.
least I got a good relationship here. But yeah, because anything I do, like obviously he does like running, so running wise, he doesn't like to read a lot about running, but he gets excited when we get a new book or like we're
Hmm.
interviewing someone and he asks me about
Hmm.
it and things like that. He listens to all our podcasts, which like, I mean, not everybody is a total running book nerd like we are,
No, that's
but
true.
but he tries. He puts in the effort like he listens to all the episodes. Not always when they come out, but he listens to them also.
Probably one thing that's in the book relatable to the general population category that I just mention, which is slightly different to what I've spoken about before, is I sort of identified a little bit with Lauren because she's a bit of a rebel. She's a bit of a vigilante. She's a bit of a trying to run
Against the grain
against the
when it doesn't
corporation,
suit her.
against the man sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I can't help but, see a little bit of myself. I'm the guy who wouldn't go to the Pink Floyd concert because somebody's got to make a stand, and I guess that's got to be me. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I see Lauren doing that on a bigger level, and I go, yeah, I can feel that.
Hmm.
Um, so personally, because of that in me, I couldn't help but root for her and be interested in how she was trying to unlock a problem and live through her problems.
Yeah, I do see that resemblance now that you mention it. So, should we go on to the last topic?
Yeah.
Was there anything that you learned that you think is going to help your running?
Ooh, yes. You can have all I think what you see is you can have all the talent in the world. You'll need some luck, but you can't influence that. So you can forget about that. That'll just happen or not. You have to just put yourself in the way of the luck or the unluck. If it happens to be that, so be it. Don't worry about that. You can't influence it. But inspiration and passion are essential ingredients. So you have to bring those to the table. You may or may not have a level of talent that is going to get you to the Olympics, or but you may have not enough luck. Raw talent and luck you can't do anything about, but you can bring the inspiration and the passion to drive you to the best possible outcome that you can get. So I think, what we learned from that is you have to do that. You can control that, and you have to do that for yourself. Obviously not every day at a high level, but
Hmm.
you have to.
That was actually a good point.
What we say in our training is, we have to cultivate joy and passion for the work, because we have to bring that in order to get us through, and to do it well. At the end of the day, maybe this is a very particular point, but at the end of the day, you might get to run the race that you want, you might not. We never know what's going to happen, and mostly we might get a result we don't like because we're choosing to push our limits. And
That's true.
what we can't do is let that kill our fire. We've got to
Yeah,
be inspired every for our training program, inspired for our program, for our project, passionate about it. And therein in itself is the enjoyment. If you run an all-time PR in the race at the end of that training program, well, that's great. That's fantastic. And we can be joyful about that for a couple of weeks, but then that's gone. So that's a long way of saying inspiration and passion are essential ingredients. If you bring those, other things you can deal with.
and I guess you give yourself the opportunity for the other things to happen,
Hmm.
like the luck. I guess I picked out Lauren's kind of, I guess it was kind of like her closing remarks. Lauren talks about having been running for everybody else for her whole life, like starting with her dad, started running
Hmm.
kind of for her dad because it made him proud and she loved to make him happy and he loved, um and she said like after she retired that she just wanted to run for herself. And I guess I kind of saw myself in that. Like I also when I started running, my dad was kind of very involved and I always kind of wanted to make him proud. Eventually I also quit the sport because it seemed like nothing I did was good enough. And I think that mostly since I've come back to running, I do run for myself. But I think that sometimes I pick goals and things that I guess I pick a little haphazardly and not really because I want them, but more, I guess, because I want to be with the other people that are achieving them. So, like, I don't do a lot of track races because none of our teammates do track races. So things like that. And so maybe I need to take a little bit of that, run for myself and like do a season of focusing on something that I like instead of just something.
That you want to do just for you.
Yeah. And it's not that I dislike, like, I love training for the marathon, but I've been disappointed by the last, whatever, 3 marathons or 4 marathons that I've
Mm.
done. And, they're often like 6 months apart, so that means like about 2 years worth of training, being disappointed. And yes, I love the training, especially when like we're doing summer training because I absolutely love summer and I love having an excuse to be outside for 3 hours because I'm running. But I don't like the winter running quite as much. I guess part of me just kind of like you do end up because you're training so long for this one goal. I think part of me just ends up putting a lot of importance on that one goal because it's all this time that you've invested. Even though like I like the time invested for what it is, being outside for 3 hours, having an excuse to see my running buddy like 6 times a week, having an excuse to like meet you at your place for a medium long run and like see your dog after in the backyard or like, go for breakfast after a long run with our team and things like that. Like, so I love it for what it is, but I also sometimes that whole process, it just funnels into this one day, and that one day ends up being just that much more disappointing because I feel like I've just put all of this expectation on it. If I could do one of these other goals that that are kind of just for me. I guess it'll just mean that I guess I don't know how to describe it. It's just I think that they're
You'll
lighter.
get more fulfillment out of it without feeling stressed.
Yeah, I think also because running a 5K, running track, you can run like 4 races in a season, which means any one race has not too much weight. It's not like the marathon where you're preparing for this one race. And so the race has all of the weight of the last 6 months of training.
To come down to Australia with me and run the park run season.
Yeah, well, we'll take you up on that, but it won't be this year.
Eight park runs, eight park runs in 8 weeks, and then you get one little 5K test every week.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't work out, you go, oh,
Oh,
okay.
well,
How
I'll
should I set
just try
myself up for
again
next
next
week?
week.
How should I set myself up for next week? Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I had was in terms of anything that will help your running, I kind of turned the thing on the reverse and said, will your running help with anything else? Rather
Hmm.
than will anything help with your running? If you apply all your learnings to your talent as a runner,
Mm-hmm.
you can learn a whole bunch of things that can serve the rest of your life. Things like consistency,
Mm-hmm.
dedication, self-belief, smart risk taking, sheer hard work, grind.
Because there are definitely days like that.
And running, if you apply yourself to your running, will require you to develop all of those things. And then you can take all of those things and apply them everywhere else in your life. And we see that in the book with something like with Lauren and her business, Picky Bars, where she
Mm-hmm.
did sort of a homemade nutritional super fuel bar. And she basically took all of her characteristics that we see her as a runner, stubbornness, hard work, dedication, just puts it all into a business and grows the business from nothing to, I mean, they ended up selling it for like tens of millions of dollars, I think. A number in my head, but I'm not sure if it's right, but it was, more than $10 million. She probably made more money out of that Picky Bars business than she did out of her whole running career. If she was the owner, you shouldn't compartmentalize too much either. You can develop good practices that you can apply to the rest of your life. And we learned that in the Virtuous Runner, the
Mm-hmm.
examined run book that we did.
Yeah, where she explores if running
Can make you a
can
better
make you a better
person, or
person.
if being a better person makes you a better runner. And both are true, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think running gives you a good place to, practice all those things. And then you kind of realize what you're capable of, and then you could apply it somewhere else that you perceive as more high risk.
Yeah, if you were scared, you can
Yeah.
overcome that and say, okay, I have more self-belief now. I think I can do this. That was my bit.
I guess we should give our overall opinions then.
Overall opinions. Well, I thought it was kind of a captivating, gripping, sort of fast-moving story. So it was super easy to read. Takes you right into how an athlete feels in their best and worst moments. You get to feel, I've said this before, you get to feel the elation, the joy, the passion, the anger, the despair, all through Lauren's writing. And that's credit to Lauren and how she wrote the book, I think, as well. She wrote it very well in a very honest manner that allows you to go right inside her psyche and along for the ride. It's a great historical insight into what kind of was going down in women's running in the US at that time. But also it's a really good story, well told by Lauren. And I can see why the front it says New York Times bestseller because it has a sort of bestseller quality to it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Super interesting. I couldn't put it down, and I ended up reading several chapters without having written any notes. Then I went back and I wrote some notes. And then as I was reviewing my notes to, like figure out what I wanted to say about the book and the podcast, I realized that I actually also didn't take any notes on the last few chapters. I had to go back and flip
Yeah.
through them and read paragraphs to remind myself what happened in those chapters because I had no notes. So obviously I just didn't put it down. I just read
Yeah.
right through to the
For
end.
me, for me, that's a sign that the book's great because you can't put
Yeah.
the book down to make the notes. You're
Yeah.
so you're so
Yeah.
drawn into the book. And this is one
Exactly.
that you were very keen to.
I
You
really
you
wanted to read this one
you pursued this book
for a long time.
for a while, yeah.
I tried really hard to get Lauren on,
And
but
then when we read the book, yeah, we spent, I mean, it's a little, what, a few months now that we finished the book. Usually
mhm,
we speak with the author maybe a week after we finish the book or something like that. Um,
yeah,
we kept at it trying to get Lauren because you were desperate to try and get her on. Um,
yeah.
and so we read another book. We still
There
be
goes
trying to
my
get Lauren on. We read
determination.
another book. We're still trying to get Lauren on. So, and yeah, you replied to, you were pretty determined. I was kind of,
Yeah.
we're never going to make this podcast.
I was like,
Yeah.
I want to at least hear a no. If it's no, it's no, but I don't
Somebody has
want
to
to
say,
assume
go
it's
away,
no.
Liz. Otherwise, I'm
Exactly.
just going to keep coming at you.
And so
Yeah.
finally the publisher was like, "Oh, no, she's not available." And I was like, "Okay, fine. Now we know. I'd
Yeah.
rather yeah." But I did more than three follow-ups, that's for sure.
But if you're listening, Lauren, we don't hold it against you. I mean, we missed the window in terms of the social media window for this and the PR for this. We don't hold it against you, and we'd welcome any comments you have.
Yeah, because it was released, it wasn't this year, it was last year, I think, 2023, or was it even 2021 maybe?
And the nature of our podcast, I think, is we read the books that we want to read and we like reading and we think are interesting and different or not necessarily always new. Sometimes new, brand new, but not necessarily always. So we're not seeking to do the podcast as soon as the book comes out. We're seeking to do the thing justice. Take enough time to read it, digest it. And if we lose readership because of that, well, I don't suppose we mind that much, do we?
I guess not, but also I find like books are timeless. So there's always
Yeah.
someone discovering a book for the first time.
Yeah.
Even though this book has been out officially 2023 in the front cover, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure that like one of our teammates, Christelle, I think she just read it. No, she listened to the audiobook, but it was about in the spring, I think. So
Hmm.
that got me even more excited because she's like, "Oh, I listened to the audiobook. It was really good." And that was like, "Oh, we have to get that book for the podcast." And before I give my summary thoughts on Lauren, I'm just gonna say that our running club had a breakfast run on the weekend, and the coach's wife decided to do a little cleanup in her books. And so she had a mix of like running related books and non-running related books. And she said at the breakfast run, there's a book giveaway because she was going to give them to like charity. But she said, if anybody wants any of these books, you take as many as you want. And she had laid out on her kitchen table a whole bunch of books. And someone else, because she had posted this ahead of time, someone else on our team had brought an entire box of like running related books. And it was just so cool because we saw a whole bunch of books that like we had reviewed on the podcast, but also a lot of ones that had slipped under the radar. We haven't done them. And some of them are not even all that old, like maybe a year, like released a year ago, 2 years ago. It's just we just haven't heard of them. And so it's great because there's so many books. We love hearing about them. So if ever anybody has any suggestions, something that they read that was just really fantastic that we should read and review on the podcast, then we're definitely
Up for that.
definitely up for that. Yeah. So back to Lauren's book though, because that's what we're talking about today. I guess just the readability was excellent. I was really sad for her in some sections of the book. Just I kind of related a lot to her relationship with her father and just trying to meet his expectation and sometimes I guess not really getting the recognition that maybe she would have wanted. Somewhere towards the end of the book, I think she talks about a letter that she left for her father asking him to change his drinking habits. And she had
Hmm.
written this letter and she left it on the table where he would have seen it in the morning drinking his coffee. And he did take the letter and he never acknowledged it and he never replied to it. But she was basically just asking him if he could stop drinking because she would really want him to be around when she has kids so he could, meet his grandkids and things like that. And he did end up like passing away, and I just thought that was just so sad. But at the same
Yeah.
time, so inspiring because she had the courage. She had the courage to confront him, not really confront, but, tell him that what he's doing kind of hurts her and she'd like him to change. And I thought I was pretty inspired by that because
She's
I thought
courageous enough to do what she could.
exactly. Yeah, because at the same time, like I feel like she had a bit of a fear of her father in certain
Mm.
situations, like when he was drinking. But for sure, it's her father and she loved him and she built up the courage to, ask him to change. So yeah, that was part of the book. That was one of those Kleenex moments, actually. So so warning to anybody that
I managed to get through without a Kleenex, but it
no
was a close
Kleenex?
thing.
Okay, moving on. I find that the book balanced a lot of the positive things about the sport of running. So things like friendships, ability to explore personal limits, with all the things that maybe we need to work on. So just having a positive, inclusive atmosphere on every team, that women should be recognized as more than just small men, as Stacey Sims would say, because we're capable of working just as hard, but there are just some specific women's life stages that, just need to be treated differently and they
Yeah,
shouldn't be
need to be
treated with a
factored
pay
in,
cut.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah,
need to be
yeah,
acknowledged and factored in. Mm.
exactly. So who would I recommend it to? I guess I'd recommend it to anyone interested in learning about the path to becoming a pro in the US. So if you're a young runner and you're kind of curious, this could be a book for you. Also, if you have a daughter who joined a cross country team and is starting to love it, maybe it would be a good read for that person because she might eventually face some of the body image worries that Lauren did, and I find that she does a good job of addressing all of that.
Good stuff. Apart from anybody who just likes a really good story, well written.
Yeah, good for everyone.
Okay, so that's basically that completes our podcast of Good for a Girl by Lauren Freshman.
Just in case somebody actually listens to the outro, here it is.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. Big thank you to the publisher Penguin Random House for providing review copies of the book. If you'd like to leave us feedback, you can get us on the normal social media things that we use. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter we are reviews_running. Please, if you don't not following us on social media or you haven't subscribed to our podcast on your favorite streaming platform yet, please do it now. Don't say, oh, I'll do it next week. Do it now. If you've been listening to us for a while and you're wondering how you can help us out, there are a few ways. Basically, spread the word on our podcast. Get the word out. What I would say is the best thing to do with respect to spreading the word is if you like this episode, text it to somebody. Text one of your buddies now. Text it to them. That way, the word will gradually spread. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I should tell people about it, and then you don't. Or you do, but then they don't do anything about it. If you text them personally, they're more likely to listen to it. You can also leave us reviews. We probably should have a bit of a blitz on trying to get you to do some reviews because we haven't had that many recently. We still haven't had any 1-star reviews on Spotify. So if you really could think of a reason why you'd like to leave us a 1-star review on Spotify, Liz would love it if you went there and left it. She'd be so happy. She'd tell me about it straight away. Look, we got a 1-star review. I knew we were only worth 1 star to somebody. Otherwise, feel free to leave us 5-star reviews. We're also on Buy Me a Coffee. If you'd like to go to the platform Buy Me a Coffee and search creators, Running Book Reviews under creators, you'll find us there. You don't actually have to buy us a coffee. You can if you want, but you can just go there and look at the little bits and bobs and stuff that we've got there. Photos of our smiling faces and various other little snippets. Basically, that's all from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.